Hello, everybody. All right, I'm going to start with you, Sean. Give me some good advice on how to run a tabletop exercise.
Use realistic scenarios.
That's good advice. All right. To you, Christina, give me some bad advice on running a tabletop scenario.
I say just skip the tabletop scenario, buy cyber insurance, and call it a day.
There's some good bad advice. All right, one up that one, Sean. Give me some worse advice.
Have your entire board around the room, all the executives walk in, take them all hostage, and say, "This is the exercise. It's for real."
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Hey, welcome everybody to Super Cyber Friday. My name is David Spark, and today's topic is hacking tabletop exercises. We are definitely going to have a good show because we've been laughing nonstop in the green room. So let's continue this on for the next hour. Our topic is an hour of critical thinking about enhancing incident response readiness. That's what the tabletop is all about. Our guests, you just met them, Christina Shannon, who's the CIO over at Kick Consumer Products, and Sean Bowen, who now we're saying is the CISO at large. He's in an interim period right now as we speak. But all I know is that Sean and Christina have known each other for a while, and Sean is going to be making a lot of insulting comments throughout the hour about the fact that Christina is the CIO, because she used to be a CISO. One would see that as a promotion to CIO, but Sean doesn't see it that way. All right, let's go through all the different ways you can participate. Those of us who have been here before know all these different ways. There's the chat room. Our bad idea question is how not to conduct a tabletop exercise. I'm looking for creativity from you. I'm also looking for great tips, 10% tips, how to improve tabletop exercises. Remember, label it bad idea : for the bad ideas or 10% : for the good ideas. Don't mix that up, please. You can join us on video with Bring Me On. We'll try to get as many of you on as we possibly can. Ask a question for our guests. You'll see there's a little speech bubble in the right-hand side of the screen. You click on that, ask a question. I will get to as many of those as I can. Submit a question for our Super Cyber Meetup. At the end of the hour, we're going to meet up on Discord. I know there were problems last week, and we'll discuss how we are solving that problem, but we did something completely different, so that we shouldn't have that issue, but we also will have support for you should you have an issue. So hang tight for that. But stick around for our meetup at the end of the hour, because you can submit a question and we'll talk about anything you'd like, not just this topic, but anything you like afterwards, and vote for your favorite question as well. Let me get through the rest of this as quickly as I possibly can. So here's the rundown. We'll play public interest. We'll play fantasy sig. So we'll ask for your Super Cyber Meetup questions, but at any time, just type in meetup : and the whole point is you put that in there. We save that and we know to ask that at the end of the hour during our meetup. I do also want to mention that next week we'll be doing the topic of hacking leadership skills. This will be a very good topic, an hour of critical thinking about building the skills you need to succeed as a leader. If you look at the bottom of the screen, there is a big button there that says register for 913 hacking leadership skills. Well, guess what? You click on that. It opens up another window. You register for that. There, you don't leave this room. So, all right, with all that nonsense done, I now have a question for both you, Christina, and Sean. And this is a question I've always had about tabletop exercises, and I've never asked it. And here I'm going to ask it. And I'm sure this happens all the time. A tabletop exercise is, when you boil it down, a game of pretend. And to make them successful, as I understand, you need to get all the key people in a room or on the same line at the same time. Yet, doing that, I know, is not easy. That's why you don't do them that often. But how do you argue that this game of pretend is actually very critical? And I know that you have some extraordinarily important meeting right now, or something extraordinarily important to do that is not a game of pretend. How do you convince that this is something that all these heads of different departments need to show up for, Christina?
I'll start with using a quote from one of my favorite folks. The late, great Kobe Bryant said that confidence comes from preparation, right? We want to be confident in understanding our risk exposure and our resiliency for responding to stuff as an organization, or responding to, bad cyber attacks or disaster scenarios. And the only way you can do that is test your plan. Without testing your plan, you just got a piece of paper and you're hoping and wishing.
Very good point. How do you do this, Sean? How do you convince them that this game of pretend is actually critical, and everything that they have planned, which is important, this has to take priority?
As I said earlier, take them hostage. I think it's about building, that reputation, right? You can't your first 30 days on the job, you can't convince your exec peers to get into a boardroom with you for 4 hours and plan it out. But once you've built a reputation of trust between us, that the time I'm using, I'm respecting your calendar, but I'm going to give back to you. And that took me, for me, it was, I didn't do it for probably 18 months, 19 months after I joined. I finally did it. And, the board had been asking me, when are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? And I said, when we're ready. And we're not ready yet. And it was partially because I need to be ready with them. I needed them to trust me in that room.
Mm-hmm. By the way, if you have technical difficulties, like if one of our screens goes black or we freeze or something like that, just refresh your browser. By the way, this whole event works a lot better if you're in a Chrome browser. So if you're not in a Chrome browser, I suggest switching over to a Chrome browser. Oh, let me also make a request. If you click the link for this event where it says, crowdcast.io/c/hacking-tabletop, if you copy and paste that and put it into LinkedIn and invite your LinkedIn friends, we'd like to get a lot more people in there. Please go ahead, invite your friends to join us right now. All right. So, then getting everybody together at the same time, I know, is difficult. Are tabletop exercises, or can you do versions of them that only include certain people? Can it work and then have certain ones where you have everybody? I mean, because I know you want to do it a lot, but doing it a lot with everybody, I'm sure, is a tantamount task.
I think that I think that's a good call out, right? Because you could do tabletops for threat-based risk scenarios that are, you're trying to understand, the likelihood of a ransomware attack being effective, and you might not necessarily need to go to all of your disclosure type procedures, but you just want to understand technically, are my controls are they mature enough to detect, respond, recover? You could do that without bringing in the executive team, and you could do that at the security level, but at some point you're going to want to inform still the executive team on the findings, the remediation, and then the residual risk.
Sean, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think if you think of it as like a layered cake, right? There's to enjoy the entire cake, you need to go through all the layers. That doesn't mean you build all the layers at the same time. And thankfully, I spent a handful of years in the government, which I would argue is probably one of the best planning organizations in the world. We go all the way back to Dwight Eisenhower's comment of, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And I think that's a key piece here, right? Constantly walking through those planning exercises, the military planning for war at a constant, no matter where you're at in the organization, you're training at some level. And that means, from pilots getting out and flying a simulation of combat to the executive leadership or the planners that are coordinating the battles, and they're doing it all with fake planes. There's no real planes flying. We're simulating that scenario. And so as you carve out your exercise, there's scenarios for your help desk to walk through. There's scenarios for your incident response team to walk through. There's scenarios for just the CIO's team. There's scenarios for the legal. And so you can kind of break up your exercise accordingly. And that's where you want to draw hard boundaries, because you don't want to say, and then you have what we call white cell injects, where you act like one of those people, like, okay, the lawyer says this, now go. You don't need the lawyer to actually be there, because you've already exercised that separately. Mm-hmm. You know what the lawyer's going to say, because you've walked that scenario. So I think being able to carve out individual components, think of it like a waffle, right? You could put syrup in each individual piece, different, and then train them all separately. And then when it happens, you should do at some point all of them at the same time, and
hopefully they've all been trained, and so that would run smoother. Actually, that's actually a really good point. It's probably better to do it in micro units and then have the one all together. All right, I have to call it Dutch.
Real quick, are we serving waffles in the Discord after? Just curious.
That'd be a great idea. I have no waffles, unfortunately, here.
I will get you a waffle, Christina.
By the way,
Thank you.
Dutch Schwartz's bad idea is not bad. I'm going to say this right now. It is not bad. Show up at the next board meeting in a cloak carrying an oaken staff with Sean Bowen's face carved in the top. Then point to the CEO and say, I am the ghost of Breach's future. You're doomed unless you follow me to the tabletop exercise next door. This is not a bad idea at all. What do you think, Sean?
I mean, if it's a 3D, if it's a good carving with the beard, yeah, I think it would work.
Yeah,
I think a lot of authority comes with the beard.
It does. I mean, there's everything about this I like. It's good. All right. So let me ask the two of you. You have conducted many tabletop exercises. I know communication is the big thing that is kind of the big learning out of it. What are surprising things you have learned from doing tabletop exercises yourselves? Like, oh my God, had we never done this, we never would have discovered this. Like, Christina, what have you discovered?
I think generally speaking, it's really seeing how much, like when you write a plan and then you get sign off on the plan, you assume that everybody's read it, everybody knows what to do. But then when you're actually going through it, like you spot a number of things from, the communication, did I, consult the right order of, from a communication standpoint, did I start with the right chain? Did I leave people out? Like that's been the most common thing I've seen is that there's been a quick, a focus more on the execution from the technical perspective and not necessarily the inclusion needed from the communication and bringing all the parties in, especially on the data breach type tabletop scenarios. That's been one where I've consistently seen where the inclusion of the business folks, the legal, the PR, like that's been something that's been like we need to do a couple more tabletops in a few different places I was at just to get it to where everyone understood. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. It kind of goes back to the first point of how hard it is to bring those folks to the table. But, through practice, you learn a lot and you just redo it.
All right, Sean, what has been big learnings you have learned from any tabletop exercise?
I'll give a close, I can't reveal, I don't feel comfortable revealing all the details, but I'll give a close scenario to tabletop I recently had. So I'll go back to the story of use a realistic scenario because naturally people are going to fight the scenario. That's what we call it in the military. You're going to fight the exercise, fight the scenario, whatever. Like just buy into this scenario.
This was a line from Bruce Schneier, actually, because when we do the what's worse scenarios, they goes, do not fight the hypothetical. That's what it was.
Exactly.
Don't fight the hypothetical.
So I knew that going in, that prior to me joining, that everyone fought it and it was a waste of time. Yet I needed to do it. So I did a red team beforehand, same company I used for the red team, and I did a real scenario. And within maybe the first 15 minutes, that would never happen. I'm like, BS, it happened. Here you go. Now I've added credibility to the tabletop immediately. But during that tabletop, I wanted the FBI, and I'll give my standard plug that I do for the FBI. The FBI is an incredible partner, especially if you're in a critical sector. And if you don't know your FBI contact, you should. They will offer to come in and help in various scenarios. They'll even play in these exercises with you. So
John Loba has this include a communication specialist in your TTS.
Well, definitely a communication specialist. That way, when you're exercising the PR part of this, and so my company wasn't quite ready for that. I was lucky that the ASAC, which is the second in charge at a field office, had recently retired and joined this company. So I had her play. So she wasn't actual FBI, but she was 4 months removed from the FBI, and we walked through a scenario where we discovered that we had government data. We didn't realize we had government data that would be considered protected. There's some that is and some that isn't, not classified. And so that scenario changed the entire room's dynamic. We deal with a lot of private air travel. And so when that happened, the room realized that we no longer have say on whether or not the FBI gets to come in and help us or not. They take over the entire scenario. And we were like, wow, we need to find a way. So we learned about our data and the way we were doing stuff, that we need to address it in a different way so that we can properly protect our requirements as well as the government's appropriately. It wasn't that we were doing anything wrong. It's just if a scenario happens, we don't have as much flexibility. And that was something that the executives didn't even know about. So it was.
We have a question that just came in, and I believe this is Edward Contreras, as I can see from its little its small and blurry icon. And Edward is the CISO over at Frost Bank, and he asks, "What are your thoughts on hiring a legal firm to exercise your board and executive team?" So this is kind of along the lines also of getting a communication specialist, but there's some definitely specialized knowledge. The cloak of privilege can be beneficial without the potential exposure of the results. Have either of you done this? Where do you see the value in this?
Yes, we did it. So we did both. I think that there's value to having every person come in and do your exercise, right? If you're going to do a hurricane evacuation piece, you probably want the fire department and FEMA involved, right? They're the experts in it. But you probably need to have a couple other people involved, like legal, so that they because FEMA doesn't care about HR requirements of people and all this other stuff. So you need someone that's an expert in that. And so I think having someone like a CrowdStrike or Mandiant or Red Canary or someone like that can do a technical exercise, they have experience with those. But then you also want to pair that up with a legal firm that's going to come in and do stuff, and maybe even a PR firm, because you want to go through those scenarios. None of them know finance. So do you want to bring in a financial person, expert, that's going to talk through this? Like, how do you deal with it? So I think getting the exercise from different vectors and point of views is going to be incredible value to the organization. Can you afford to do all of those? No. So you kind of pick which one, but doing it from the same vendor year over year, I think you're failing.
Good point. Right. I'm not going to have you jump in here yet, Christina, because we're going to play a game. All right. Hold on. There we go.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
All right, here we go. 4 questions. I always point out, didn't we last week, didn't we have someone do 4 for 4? I think we did. Didn't we? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Andrew's already voted.
All right, here we go. I did not create these. Rich Straffolino created these, so I'm going to play along as well. Everyone, red team or blue team, remember, it's not just cybersecurity people who search on Google. It's everybody. So what do you think gets more searches, red team or blue team?
Bravo.
B? What do you think, Christina?
I say red team, B.
I'm going red team B as well. I think there's more red team. Let's see what we got. Yes, red team, almost 4-1 there. That is a lot. All right. By the way, we're getting lots of good tips from everybody. All right. Everyone's got one on the board. Let's go to the next one. All right. Commander, facilitator, stakeholder. Which gets the most?
I'll go with commander.
I'll say stakeholder.
I'm going to go with stakeholder too. I think it's E. Let's see what we got. Oh, no, Sean.
I think people assume they know what D and E means.
All right, commander, very good. Okay, you are 2 for 2 right now. Christina, we're 0-1 right now. All right, role play, simulation, tabletop, or training. Ooh, this is a good one.
I'm going F because not just IT people are using Google.
Yeah, well, that's the point I was trying to make earlier.
Christina's flustered now.
That's good.
I'll go with G, simulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it's not spelled ROLL play for the nerds too. I'm going to say I on this one. What do you think, Christina?
I think G, simulation.
Oh, everyone froze. I froze, or no? I'm going to refresh my screen,
I'm here.
everybody.
Am I here? I'm here. Are you here?
I see you.
I
think I saw the same thing. You both were frozen, but the chat was still going crazy.
Yeah. Wow. I'm assuming he'll come back, right?
Yeah, he's coming back. David, that's perfect. Rich knows David the best, so there you go. Definitely.
David will be right back after building this tension for the public interest. Please hold.
He's coming back as a role player.
Yeah, he'll be coming back in costume.
Wow.
Yeah. Or you could say this is a simulation.
This is our chance, Rich. We could have done all the team.
Oh, come on.
We can see you and hear you, David, before you say the things you're thinking. This is a live tabletop exercise.
We need to adapt and overcome.
I will use this as a real situation to train people. I think a lot of times if you have requirements to do something, let's say like practice your instant response or practice your disconnected from crowdcast scenario, if you actually have a real world scenario, sign that off as your practice. Like you don't have to practice in the same week that you had a real scenario.
All right, my apologies. This all collapsed on us, so you don't have. I got to bring up the game again. My apologies, everybody. The thing sometimes. Oh, it's a hide. Okay, hold on. I'm going to hide it, and then I'm going to bring it back again.
These are his actual internal thoughts for everyone that are following along.
Hold it. You guys can see and hear me. Yes.
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 Okay. All right. Geez.
It's like this is inside out.
Okay. All right, this one we did this. You're 2 for 2. All right, role play. You're taking role play, right, Sean?
Box,
Christina,
right, yeah.
you're taking what?
Simulation.
Simulation. I'm taking training. The winner is training. All right.
Dang, I was close.
John and I are tied right now. Here we go.
That's close.
This is the last one. Analysis, plan, playbook, or script. Oh, this is a good one.
Script.
Playbook.
I'm gonna go with plan.
I
There's
asked
a lot
for
of
movie
like
scripts
building
all the
plans.
time.
This plan. I'm going plan.
Dang it.
We're all wrong. Analysis.
We overanalyzed it.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's get back into the game here. All right. This plan is your plan by Andrew. Hadass is 3 for 4. Good job, Hadass. All right. Let's get rid of this and go back to our discussion at hand. And we all have another question that just came in. My apologies. I disappeared. From Carla. Hello, everyone. Is a TTX tabletop exercise always just hypothetical, or are there actual hands-on tasks during the exercise? It's a good question.
I think they could be both. Like I think it depends on what you're exercising, what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you what the scenario is. There's definitely scenarios. I don't think you're going to get your executive team in there. We're like, all right, chief marketing officer, go off and draft a public release now. Come back in an hour. Like that's excessive. But I think that there's scenarios at the more entry level or lower level, middle management, or even down at the help desk or instant response levels where you can actually go through some. I mean, that's what a purple team exercise is right. It's a tabletop with some actual technical injects. Christina.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I've seen them more when you're doing it at the technical level, but I agree. It can be depending on the situation and the outcome desired.
All right, let me ask this question. So I'm going to echo a great tip that we've mentioned many times on the podcast. It came from Andy Ellis when he was working over at Akamai. They would, whenever they had, an incident, they would make it a policy that whatever communications that would have to go out publicly, that would be written before they would have the meeting. There was no meeting to discuss, what are we writing up, and then go write it, then we'll edit whatever. The idea is you came with the draft of the document, and the decision of the meeting was, are we sending this out or not? Not what is going to be in the document, which I thought was a great tip. I think it moves things along far quicker. So there'd be sometimes they draft something and would never go out. Sometimes they would go out. So are there sort of mechanical techniques that you've come up with, like that example, that have improved your responsiveness, your communications, anything like that? Any kind of techniques that you've learned through tabletop exercises that have improved anything in the essentially incident response experience? Christina?
I think looking at our incidents and then basically using past incidents as our tabletop, that's really been probably from an effective standpoint how we've really mitigated risk or have gained confidence that we can manage risk and then be resilient in recovery processes.
Okay. What about you, Sean? Any techniques that you've learned?
Yeah, I like the idea of bringing that in there. I think that's much more focused on a communications aspect of the exercise. I think build, like as Christina said, building off of either actual incidents or actual red team results, that diffuses a lot of the hypothetical that's happening in the conversation, and it allows you to kind of go through it, and then the conversation happens. I know our scenario we walked through because of the company I was at. We talked. You're going to get called to Congress if this scenario were to happen. You're going to be testifying to Congress. Like, what do you think about it? And it immediately our response is, we're not equipped to do that. We would immediately hire a firm to coach us through that. Okay, next scenario. Like, so at least we addressed it in the way we addressed it without actually knowing the answer to the question. We know how to get the answer to the question. And I think sometimes that's the right answer for the tabletop internal, is we know how to get the answer.
That's very good. All right. A bunch of questions just came in. Let's try to answer these quickly. Let's start with this one from Dan Geechee. Here we go. What are some scenarios in tabletop exercises that you found to be the opposite question, ineffective? What have you tried? Like, oh, we can't do this again because this isn't helping anybody.
I would say for me, it's been when we treat them as a compliance exercise, just generally speaking. I've seen some of those not really pan out to much benefit for the organization, for any of the goals. It was just, when you treat it like a compliance exercise, it seems like it's just a paper exercise, one and done. It doesn't really do anything.
Sean.
Yeah, I think that applies for everything, right? But I think as we discussed a couple of times, scenarios that they can't buy into is definitely going to be a problem. I think also having unrealistic demands of your organization, like expecting the COO to know the answer of what a field technician would be doing. Like, sorry, they don't know what the field technician is doing. They understand the concept. That's the separation of the organization's hierarchy. And so walking in with a scenario that's like, okay, at an oil field, this happened. What are you going to do about it? Like, the president of that division is not going to know what, like, I don't know, we'll assign this person to figure that out. Like, we don't know how to repair it. We know how to get to that space. And so I think making scenarios that are appropriate for the level of people you have in there is key to success.
All right, here's a question from Tina. How effective are tabletops for technical disaster incident purposes? I mean, I think that's the whole point of them. It seems organizations lean into tabletops but don't do actual functional exercises regularly, or sometimes not at all. I'm going to summarize it. How often do you do tabletops, and when the actual incident happens, everything they learn goes right out the window? Does that happen?
Every time.
Every time?
Every time it goes out the window. This is why, like Eisenhower's quote, right? Plans are useless. Like, if you think your plan is going to survive first contact, or Mike Tyson's quote, right? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth or face, right? Same problem. Like, if you're relying on the plan, you're going to fail. But if you've practiced planning, you can pivot. In the Air Force, we dubbed a term called OODA: observe, orient, decide, act. It's an OODA loop, OODA. And so the more we practice that OODA loop, the faster we're able to respond to scenarios we've never seen before in our life. And that's the same concept. That's the purpose. The purpose of the exercise isn't to create a plan for that scenario, because that scenario is never going to happen again. So I think that's the key. And if people are taking from a TTX a perfect plan, putting it in a binder and putting it on a shelf, they're not helping their organization either.
I'm going to quote Hadass Kasorla, because I actually asked her this question on stage when we did a show in Clearwater, Florida. And she said the greatest thing to add to a tabletop exercise is randomness. Change it up. I like that answer. I don't know if she said that in the chat room. Christina, what is your answer to the question of, like, do things go out the window after they learn their tabletop exercise?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that things go out the window. I think that really like how you formulate like your post exercise, follow-ups, whatever those are, and then how you put what processes you put in place for continuous improvement. Like those really determine, I think, how effective the exercise was and then how you sustain it. Otherwise it is, yeah, I mean, because our brains, right, naturally we lose within 24 hours half of what we just learned for the first time. I think that it's either 24 or 48, but I think by like a couple of days you've lost like most of what it's learning something new, right? Yeah.
Oh, this is a good question. Hold it. Let me see. Oh, you got something to say, Sean? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Christina hit on something that's very powerful, and she kind of skipped over it. I want to make sure people heard what she said. It's that follow-on after action. The Air Force did a simulation where we had red teams attacking blue teams, and one red team was able to do an after action post-mortem after each scenario, and the other team was not. They went and did snacks and chit-chatted about whatever. The team that did after actions and postmortems got 80% further through the scenario in preceding attacks because of the postmortem. And I think that's a piece that we all like. Exercise is over. Let's go drink. Go have a happy hour.
This is exactly Rory Scott Harlow's question. How long does it, so it's part of that question. How long does it typically take you to develop a quality scenario? Wonder if you're taking advantage of ChatGPT in this case. And then also to analyze how it went afterwards, do you always provide a follow-up report? So following up to what you just said, we'll add how long it takes you to do a scenario too, Rory's question.
Yeah, well, I'm using Clippy to generate those, not ChatGPT. But no, the successor to Clippy. No, the post exercise report is a little bit different. That's kind of lessons observed, lessons learned type conversation, and unfortunately, they don't get read too much, but they should still be documented. The other half of that is what are you doing to affect change, and are you tracking all of that stuff? And so I think those are two reports that come out of it. And yes, I do think they should happen after every exercise, after every practice scenario, after every real scenario. You should sit down and do those.
Okay. Christina, postmortems, and also how long does it take you to create a snenario?
I mean, I think in terms of how long it takes to create the scenario, it really depends on like what you're trying to find out or what you're trying to practice. Because I've seen I've seen it where you're actually doing more of the technical red teaming, blue teaming, and it's like that's several days, right? But I've also seen it where when you're bringing in the executives, it's a couple hours because that's really all the time that they'll give you. So, Sean, I don't know about you, but like, what do you see on average for that?
For people giving
a scenario planning, like the time it takes to put together a scenario.
Well, I don't know. I outsourced that. It did take weeks. It did take weeks because there's a lot of interviews involved, and we were testing things out, and we said, hey, that's not that wouldn't happen like that because they're making some inferences in there. So yeah.
But you called out a good thing though. There are a lot of tools out there today, right, that do the dynamic, the dynamic cases and stuff like that. So yeah.
And there are some products, right, that kind of walk through and help you if I'm not trying to I can't honestly, I can't think of any of the names of them. I've used them in conferences for us, but there's enough scenarios out there that you can walk through them. It's just knowing your audience. If your audience can't go through those hypotheticals, it's difficult.
All right. We're going to do our next game fairly soon, but I do want to remind everybody, because I haven't mentioned it again, the link at the bottom of the screen, please register for it. That is our event next week, Hacking Leadership Skills, which should be a super fun event, and we want you to join that as well. Remember, clicking on that will not take you out. And if you have not joined our chat at the end, and again, huge apologies to the people who tried to get in last week. Well, I think we have solved the problem, but what's going to happen is at the end of the hour, when that link changes to our Discord link, which will be meetup, where we'll get to have face-to-face time with each other for a half hour after the show, that'll change to that new link. Rich is going to stick around in this public chat room, even though the show will be over. If you have a hard time getting in, Rich will answer any questions you have here in the public chat room when the entire thing is over. He'll be just around for essentially about 5 minutes. We're assuming that if you don't get in within the first 5 minutes, you're not coming in. But we want you to come in. We'd like to see you.
Dutch generally has bad ideas. I think that's what Dutch stands for in Dutch. It means bad ideas. But he's got like half of it is a bad idea. All TTXs are murder mystery dinners on a train. The rest of it is where he starts to get a bad idea. But the concept of having fun is actually a really good idea. Creating a scenario that people want to show up and play is, to your question earlier, how do you get people to show up to the conference room, have it valuable to them, or have it entertaining in a way that people want to show up?
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for that as well. All right, let us here. I got to move something around. Let me do this. Whoops, I'm gonna move it over here. That's not what I wanted to do. Oh, this is not working well for me. Hold on. I'm moving things around to make this work out for everybody. Oh, you know what it is? Because this damn advertisement for Gemini. I don't need Gemini. All right, we are going to play our next game.
It's time to play Fantasy Seesaw.
Oh, hold on. Did I just freeze again?
You did,
No,
but
hold
you
on.
can have
I did
backup
not-
audio if you
not
need
freeze.
it.
Hold on, wait. Okay, I saw a little freezing, but this is okay. Here's how Fantasy Seesaw works. You should be able to see my screen in just a second.
Yes.
Okay. So, who won? It was Sean. You won the last game. Yes,
I did. Yeah.
Yes, he
the
did.
public interest game. All right. So you
Christine,
get to go
keeping
first
track.
in picking this. So what happens is we have these controls. There's 10 controls here, and you get to pick one at a time, like you're picking players on a football team. All right. So hence Fantasy Seesaw. Once you're done picking, so essentially there's a total of 10 here. Essentially, you'll have 5, Sean, Christina will have 5, and then we go to the attack scenario, and then it'll be up to the audience to determine who is better, well situated, given your controls, for whatever the attack scenario is. But you will be able to make an argument for why you are best situated. So I let you choose first, Sean. Who first? What control do you first want on your team?
Wow. I'll take pen testing and red team exercises.
Pen testing and actual. So there we go. We picked Sean. There you go. Sean's got that. What do you want now? We got 9 left. Christina. I'm sorry, Christina.
EDR.
EDR. All right. All right, Sean, you pick the next one.
WAF. Web application firewalls are probably the best investment you can do
Where's
if you have
WAF? Hold on. Oh, at the bottom. I'm sorry. There it is. Okay. Christina, you get to pick.
Data recovery capabilities.
That's a good one.
segmentation.
I wanted that one.
You had 2 chances.
All right.
I was hoping it would drop around.
All right. Which one do you want, Christina?
Access control management.
All right.
Incident response management.
You're taking instant response. Which one do you want, Christina? 3 more left.
Threat intelligence integration.
If I took that one, you could have the remaining 2.
Which one do you want?
Code review.
You're going okay, Christina. You get fishing.
That's like having the water boy on your team.
Yeah.
All right. Now we go over the tax scenarios. So just note, here is what Sean has picked. Here is what Christina has picked over here. So what will happen is I'm going to hit this randomization button over here. And this will be see what your attack. Okay, attackers compromise a large-scale IoT botnet using it to manipulate a smart city infrastructure. So, Sean, I'll let you now argue with your 5 items that you have. Why are you best situated to handle this? And then we will put up the poll for our audience to determine. So, why are you best situated for this?
Well, first of all, I have a WAF in front of my IoT botnet or my IoT infrastructure. It's already network segmented and micro segmented within that infrastructure. I have a solid incident response management plan and team in place. All of the code review of what's been written on that customized single purpose IoT has been tested through both code review and pen testing and red team exercises. So theoretically, all possible scenarios have been exercised, and security testing again. That's all part of that whole thing. So I'm pretty well protected and tested.
All right, Christina, I'm throwing this to you. You've got a EDR, which might help very nicely in this. Why are you better situated for this kind of attack?
Well, I would say that I'm wishing I had a WAF firewall. uh, but I think I'm going all in at this point on, detection and response and recovery. That's really where you're at that point is make sure that we can recover and make sure that, we can detect it quick enough to put it out. But yeah, I'm really kind of light on my protection controls right now.
Yeah, I think the scenario is I have protect, you have detect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have just made the poll visible. Who won Fantasy CISO? Who's better situated? Please go in and vote now. And I'm going to give everyone, I'm going to count it down. I'm going to give you 15 seconds to vote. Go to the poll. So if you go to on the icons on the right, there's a little like bar chart. That's the poll. I see the votes just starting to come in. There's a lot of you here, so I'm expecting a lot of votes. So
Christina voted for
not
herself.
make a great argument for her. I thought EDR having that there would be a good thing to lean on, but you didn't lean on it too much. You kind of gave a half-assed answer there. So right now, Sean's winning.
It's responsive. No one wants to be on their heels. And ironically, Christina and I are playing each other in fantasy football this week. So
there you go.
I'm going to go 2-0 this week.
Let's see what happens. Great. I'm going to give a 10-second countdown starting now. 10. Sean's in the lead. 9.
Christina, how did you vote for yourself 6
8,
times?
Hey.
I know you're the only person voted.
To David's point, 5. I have detection response. I can always recover.
Vote for yourself.
So no matter what happens, I can recover.
Once. 4. Come on, get your votes in.
You do have data recovery.
3,
I think that's probably the best one.
2, 1, and yes. Oh, someone did vote for you, Christine, and then took it away, and then no, they put it back. So Sean wins with 18 over 9, but you did get an extra one. So you got a good number of votes. A lot of people felt that EDR was going to hold out, or maybe
I think data recovery is actually the best one because if we admit that we're going to get owned at some point in our time, your ability to return to operations is got to be your number one metric. That data recovery helps her a lot.
All right. Well,
yeah, and I was thinking about it from the standpoint of I can detect and respond, assuming that I got my agents everywhere, right? But there's still holes in EDR a little bit. But you're right, I didn't represent it well enough.
She's got her CIO hat on.
I'm telling you, once you had if you had the ransomware use case, I win. But you had the
well, it's a random attack. I can't. You can't plan for the only ransomware. As we have
learned. This is tabletop, so this is perfect.
There you go. You didn't know what was going to come. All right. Well, there you go. Fantasy CISO. Good luck on your fantasy football as well. Remember, everybody, if you haven't registered for next week, go ahead and do that right now. By the way, show up. Yes, of course, Diane. Yes, please feel free to use a screenshot of that for your next newsletter. And I'm glad you liked it. Yes, Fantasy CISO. We're going to be we're open to other ideas on how to play with Fantasy CISO.
You should make Fantasy CISO like a .com and then just let people.
I do own it. I do own FantasyCISO.com.
And you just publish that up as a web app. Make sure you have a WAF in front of it, and then that could be people's tabletops. People could take that back to their companies.
You could. All right. Kudos to Andrew, our producer, who made that little game for us. He set that whole darn game up. All right. Do we have any questions from the audience? I know we had one that I don't think I answered. Yes. Here, let's do this one from Aman Sood. How do you keep the tabletop exercise engaging to ensure participants, especially the CXOs, do not become despondent? So is there something to add the fun or entertainment or excitement, danger? I mean, I know one way, and I don't know if either of you done this, has taken people to, like, I know IBM has one of these situation rooms, I guess, if you call them, where they can do it. Have you done that to essentially make this a lot more fun and entertaining and intense? Yes? No?
Not since I left the government. In the government, I got to go be part of some really cool scenarios like that, but not in the corporate world.
What do they call those rooms? I forget what the term is. What do they call them?
There is a situation room.
Yeah,
there's also war game
right?
rooms.
Yeah.
There's war game rooms. There's battle cab. There's a couple different terms. Yeah. To the question, I can tell you how not to do this question. Our scenario, towards the end of our scenario, we started getting like all right, now you're getting sued by shareholders, you're getting this. And by the time we had already spent 2 hours, 3 hours going through a scenario, they did not want to hear about all the follow on. And we should have split that up as a separate thing. Like, okay, now you're dealing with shareholder lawsuits. Now you're dealing with it. And as I mentioned earlier, our board was like, we're not equipped to handle that. Our execs were saying we outsource all of that. And I think it depends on the company. And we failed at that part. If I stopped the exercise at about the, let's say, 75% mark, we would have been a wild success. Luckily, everyone forgot the second half. The CEO asked, someone made a joke in here, our CEO asked for doing these monthly and then saw the bill and he said, okay, maybe not monthly. So because it was a good exercise up until probably that last little tail.
Monsoon said popcorn worked well for me. So the Star Wars room. There you go. All right. What have you done that's to make things exciting? And have you done these situation rooms yourself, Christina?
Not done the situation rooms in corporate world, and that's where I've spent my entire career. When I'm thinking about execs, like they always want to understand the so what or the what's in it for them. And so like I've always had success tying what we're doing back to the things they care about, right? Like whether that's, at the very high level, most or all companies are trying to increase their revenue or they're trying to keep customers or gain customers, right? Or they care about their reputation. So I've had success, and it's more serious, but it's been tying them to the things that, they care about and understanding how to mitigate risk or impact risk to those things.
Mm-hmm. Here, a couple of quick questions here. I don't know if you guys can answer this. Maybe you can throw out some ballparks, and I'll throw this to the audience as well. Tina asked this question. What are the average budgets, expenditures on tabletops by organization size? Small business, middle market, corporate. I mean, can you give ballpark numbers on this? Do you have any idea?
I'll tell you, my scenario was about 100,000, 110,000 for my scenario. It was bundled with my red team, so I probably got a discount on it. And it was a well-known company that maybe recently took down the world. But they did a phenomenal job. And but I think it's about knowing what your goal is, right? And some of it should be outsourced, and you should definitely pay attention and do it yourself, because it's never going to be as good as if you're doing them in your scenario. You want to take that framework. But yeah, I was at a Fortune 100 company, so a little bit different.
So technically, you could do it for free if you do it yourself. It's just not going to be as
but it's also a resource, right? How many resources do you have available to do it? So I think the key is trying to bundle it into things is a good way to do it. So like we bundle our purple teams into our MDR contracts, or where I used to be. We bundled the purple teams because we wanted to make sure we had purple teams. We wanted that one single line item. And so I would look at something like that, like bundling it into your external counsel or your insurance broker or something like that, and try to bundle things into those scenarios. That way you get a better discount on it. But yeah, the ranges can be all over from free. I'm sure 100,000 is cheap compared to some scenarios.
What about Christina?
I've been in organizations in really large organizations where we did it ourselves. And then also when bringing in outside, I've done that where I'm at now, and around that 2 billion revenue mark is a bit like the end. So mid-size, almost big, but not quite big. And that's been around 50 grand for bringing in someone from the outside.
0, 50 grand, 100 grand. That's our answer to this question.
She's a CIO, so she's probably cutting the security budget.
No.
There we go.
Growing it.
All right. We've talked about this already, but Brad Barmettler asks, do you find the legal eagles are proactive and insightful in the tabletop exercises? I'm assuming they're critical for the experience. Yes? Like what value have you watched them bring to the tabletop?
I'm laughing because one time I did a tabletop and forgot the memo, or forgot to validate that the general counsel was going to be the one doing it and that they weren't bringing in outside counsel. So I definitely recommend that you make sure that your internal counsel is the one that would be responding to the breach, and that they wouldn't be bringing in an outside counsel. That didn't fully answer the question, but that's been my experience, is making sure that they're going to do it first of all.
John?
Everyone has their own value, right? Lawyers are going to come from what lawyers were taught to do. and that is try to mitigate, a very specific risk, and everything's going to be under that construct. Whereas they might not always be in the same mindset as someone who's more technical. Like, not as many legal people are going to look at scenarios like, let's say you're paying someone on the OFAC list, Bitcoin, for your ransomware scenario. The legal's view on whether or not you pay an OFAC listed, member is very different than maybe the operations or the finance officer says, just pay it and we'll deal with the fines. And that might be very different than a technical view on it. And I think that's why it's a whole of team exercise, and you want the scenarios coming from different people. You want a legal focused exercise, but then you also want an operations focused exercise, or law enforcement. You want to bring in the FBI to kind of give you their scenario. So,
what's our time? Okay, so we got 9 minutes left. I want to remind people, please stick around for a meetup at the end of the show. If you have not clicked the link on the Hacking Leadership Skills to register for next week, please go ahead and do that right now. We're going to be wrapping up in 9 minutes here. We saw Kroll charges circa from a Monsoon 40 to 70K for medium organizations. So what have we not talked about with regards to tabletop exercises that we need to talk about? And then I'm gonna ask you this one question. I'm gonna go to a wrap up, and if we have time left, we'll answer final questions. Christina, what have we not talked about? And there's a lot to talk about. By the way, we got some some sort of open-ended questions from Carla Schleminger and also Leah Gamble. The other thing I haven't mentioned. Well, let me finish this. In general, they're just asking for some advice basically on starting a tabletop. Like, if you have knowledge level 0, is there good resources on how to start a tabletop? Anyone can recommend in the chat room, or either of you, Sean, Christina?
Well, to Carla's question, I don't even think it's necessarily, don't think about IT. Just like, you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert.
She's a PR expert, Carla.
Yeah, but IT can go down because literally what CrowdStrike did, right? CrowdStrike, I think CrowdStrike should be studied as the premier example of how to manage the crisis from an external. Like, what George has done has been phenomenal in owning it and getting out in front, speaking on publicly in NACD and everything like that. He's spoken to several private organizations that some of us have access to. But that's a scenario where someone made a mistake and took down an organization. There, you can have an admin that just deletes your domain controller. So like there's scenarios that can happen that you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert and just pretend this thing goes away. Can you do your business? Can you return to operations appropriately? Do you do paper exercise like that? That's a scenario that needs to be walked through. And then how do you mitigate that? Ask the CIO. How do we're all in the cloud. Okay, cool. What if AWS deletes our account? Because Google just deleted some account in Australia, right? A few months back, which was, you think about a company that's wholly on, like a Netflix or someone that's, when they're starting, they're not a huge company on Netflix. If their account gets deleted, they're dead. They're dead in the water. And so you can walk through several scenarios that don't require you to be a cybersecurity expert, and then just start by asking those people the questions. So I think too many people feel like you have to understand how ransomware works and the psychology of attackers, and like, no, you don't. Just
all right. Hold it. I'm going to.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead, Christina. You answered. Then we're going to wrap up. And for the 2 minutes left, I'll ask you the last question. What we missed. Go ahead, Christina.
I was just going to say, I think Sean's spot on. I don't say that often, but he needs some kudos there. But really, I think that if you can line up, like, think about what used to happen, and it still happens in some cases for disaster recovery and those types of exercises, right? The point of those exercises was to determine availability of critical systems. So if you can identify those critical business systems, start there and look at, what are the ones that if they go down, it's going to cause a lot, or if they're unavailable, it's going to cause a lot of issues, right? Like, what could cause a business interruption to availability? That would be a good starting point, because all business people care about that.
That is a very good point right there. All right, let me just do some closing comments, and then I'm going to come right back. Remember, we're going to be doing our meetup on Discord. Now, starting in about 100 minutes from now, our cybersecurity headlines week in review, we're going to have Justin Samani, who's a partner over at YL Ventures. This is going to be a really good one. And our producer, Rich Straffolino, will be hosting that over on YouTube. So if you go to our YouTube site, which is just youtube.com/CISO series, you can register for that or be alerted about that. And you can join in the conversation just like this. We have lots of conversation about the week's news in cybersecurity. Stick around for our meetup. All right, you can change that link. Look at that, how fast that happened. Aaron, way to go on that. So you can click on that link now. If you have problems, actually go ahead and click on, let us know if you have problems. It will take you into this screen. If you look at the lower left corner, that is where you can control your settings, your audio and video settings. If we get a lot of people in one room, we're going to sort of break you up into multiple rooms. But I didn't ask this before. If you have a question you want to ask for a meetup, type it in now, meetup : and whatever the heck question. It can be on anything. Question you want insight from the rest of the community, we'll make sure we're asking. We'll get insight from as many people as possible. Remember, if you want to sponsor a Super Cyber Friday, we got them open in October. Ping me at info@cisoseries.com and we can get you on the schedule right now. Wait, one new thing I want to start doing is something called Demos with Dave. If you do a demo with me and we produce that demo and we publish it for everyone to get to see of your product. That's if you do that. All right, now we're back and we have exactly 3.5 minutes left. All right, in 1 minute, Christina, what is the topic we have not discussed with regard to tabletop exercises that we should have been discussing?
I think as important as it is to do the tabletop training with, the C-suite, the board, regulatory partners, I think it's also important to think about, what are some of the, make sure you're doing them also too with the help desk and the lower level technical teams where social engineering could be a problem.
That's a good point. Very good point. One thing we heard about is new staffers that come in are often high targets for social engineering because they have not been trained as to what you should or should not do, and they're very eager to please upper management. Sean, what is something we have not talked about that we should have been talking about during the hour?
I completely agree with Christine's comments, and kudos, especially from a CIO. You could tell that you were once a CISO. But I think the most important thing is it's a freaking exercise. It's made up. At the end of the day, just get back to doing your job, right? If you're treating this like it is the most important thing, you gotta change your perspective on it. It's an exercise. It's about educating people, and treat it as such. If at the end, it's work, right? All of this, there's so much more to life than work, and there's so much more to your job than a tabletop. And so, just remember what you're trying to get out of it, and stay focused on that, not so much the tabletop itself. What's the objective of your tabletop?
Good point, both of you. All right, I'm going to wrap this sucker up, and that was fantastic. Christine and Sean, who are rock stars on our shows, that we've had them on many times, and we adore having them on. Thank you both very, very much for participating, and thank you to our audience as well. All right, that link at the bottom of the screen, if you have not clicked it and head over to Discord, do that right now, especially if you're brand new and you've never joined us over there on our Discord. We do want to chat with you. So click that. Huge thanks to Andrew, Aaron, and Rich for helping us produce this show as well. Thank you to my guests, Christina and Sean. Thank you to our audience as well. Click the button at the bottom of the screen and join us over in Discord. Take us out, Aaron.